Let's cross now to our colleague Nompumelelo Siziba, who is in Cape Town for this year's speech. Good afternoon, Nompumelelo. I mean, when we spoke about an hour ago, you described the scenes not as busy as we would have expected it compared to last year, but I'm guessing that anticipation continues to grow as we get closer to the minister's speech.
That's right, Nastasia. Indeed, anticipation is really growing quite heavily, of course, around the country, in our homes, in our offices. You know, what magic bullet is the finance minister going to be able to use or draw on to deal with so many of our socio-economic problems? On the one hand, he needs to ensure that he gets hold or deals with the debt situation, which could run amok if he doesn't make interventions. Of course, he has indicated that he's looking to make cuts, especially around the public sector wage bill, and also freezing public sector wages over the next 3 financial years. The government reneged on paying the 2020 financial year public sector wage increase that they had signed on a dotted line that they would pay an increase of CPI plus, and of course that contention continues in the legal space, with that case going all the way to the Constitutional Court. So that's going to be an interesting one to observe. In the meantime, of course, COVID has been doing its thing. It's been wreaking havoc, and government has had to pay more money in order to deal with the impacts of the crisis, providing further social grants, providing support to small businesses. One of the issues, of course, is that credit guarantee scheme, which is being administered by the banking sector. It really hasn't done so well. Some 200 billion rand was made available. That forms part of the 500 billion rand fiscal stimulus that was given by the government last year, but it hasn't done so well insofar as it looks as though only about 18 billion rand of that money has been secured by SMEs. People are complaining that the criteria is too stringent for people to be able to get access, looking more at their assets than what they actually make. It makes sense to look at what their income is and what their revenues are, and do they look sustainable, and give them a break so that they can at least make a go of it. But if you don't have decent assets, it looks as though the banks don't really look at you. Some other players in the SME space, SME lending space, are saying, look, government, give us some of the money because we know how to deal with the SME space. We know how to assess and measure them in such a way that they're able to pay back the money and progress with their business. We know that the SME sector is a pivotal sector in the economy. It creates most of the jobs. This is a fact the world over, and this is the area that needs to be mostly stimulated. So it will be interesting to see to what extent Finance Minister will be seeking to inject some support for SMEs, because they continue to cry. A lot of SMEs having to shut down because they just haven't been able to survive the rigors of the impact of COVID-19. People don't have money in their pockets. They're not buying, they're not demanding, and this has had an impact. So it's going to be very interesting what he does in that regard. We've heard about the investment drive, President Ramaphosa pushing to see more investment, but they want to partner with the private sector, doing public-private partnerships in order to get projects going. So maybe we'll hear more about that. And then, of course, importantly, as I mentioned at the top, the debt situation. How is the minister going to get a hold of that? One of the issues that has been raised is that the shortfall on the tax take is a bit lower than had been anticipated in the midterm finance. I can hear myself in my ear, colleagues. So in the midterm budget in October, the finance minister had indicated that the shortfall in terms of the difference between government expenditure and revenue would be a 312 billion rand. Now experts say, based on the data that's come through from the revenue services, that's probably around 200 billion rand. It's still a massive gap, 200 billion rand, but it's still better than 312 billion rand. So in that case, it gives the fiscus or National Treasury a little bit of wiggle room to be able to decipher as to what it's going to do in terms of its priorities. And one of the things that's been indicated by market players is that perhaps government should go to the market and seek less in terms of its bond issuances. You know, when it goes to the market and issues bonds, it's borrowing money from investors. And so what's being suggested, given that it's got a 100 billion rand windfall, if we can call it that, it can go to the market and ask for less and begin to show its seriousness about dealing with the debt consolidation situation that needs to happen. Of course, if we continue to see debt run out of control, what we'll see is that, of course, the ratings agencies will get stronger on us and downgrade us further. It takes a long time for us to get out of junk status, and that just simply means that when government goes to market to borrow money, it's going to have to pay a higher interest rate. Already South Africa is paying about 21 cents in every rand of revenue that it receives from us, the taxpayer, in order to pay debt, to pay the interest on the debt, the interest, not even the capital, the actual debt. So if we continue to build up our debt situation, our debt bonds, our debt rates are going to increase, and it's going to be unsustainable. The priorities that we need to pay for, you know, the social stuff, the education, the police, social security, will have less in terms of resources to pay for those, because we'll be spending most of our money on paying that debt, paying the cost of that debt. I'm being told I must wrap up, but basically it's going to be interesting to see how the finance minister deals with all these myriad of issues. It's an impossible task for him. That's all from us. Of course, we will have that live speech at 2 p.m. from Finance Minister Mboweni, and we'll be talking to you as the day progresses. Back to you, Nastasia.
All right, that's Nompumelelo Siziba coming to us from Cape Town.